Today we're going to learn how to paint 3D printed parts and make them go from this to this. Let's get into it. First, materials. All the materials you'll need are a protective inhaler, sandpaper, wood filler, primer, paint, and a clear coat paint. Clear coat paint is optional, but it adds a protective layer to the final paint job. I'll go in depth as to what all these materials do. So first and foremost, safety. I would definitely recommend sanding and painting somewhere where you don't mind making a mess. Whether you're sanding inside or outside, I would definitely recommend getting one of these filtered masks. It's always important to be safe with your health, and you guys don't want to be inhaling tiny dust particles or paint. So next, sandpaper. 3D prints, especially ones done on an FDM printer, have visible layer lines, ridges, and rough patches from supports. Sanding smooths out these imperfections so they don't show through your prints later. In terms of sandpaper, you can use a manual one, but for larger prints, I would definitely recommend getting an electric sander because it makes the process so much easier. In my experience, anywhere from 320 to 600 grit sandpaper works best for me. Third on the list is wood filler. Wood filler is used to fill large gaps and craters you may have in your 3D print. With the evolution of 3D printing, I've had to use less and less of wood filler, and hopefully for your guys' situation, I hope you have to use no wood filler, but it's just good to have some on hand, and of course, just always remember to not go too overboard with this. It's just meant to fill craters that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do well sanding. So fourth on the list is primer. And for those of you who have never painted 3D parts before or just aren't familiar with spray paint, you're probably wondering what's the difference between paint and primer. So 3D printed plastics like PLA, ABS, PETG, etc. can be slick or porous, so primer creates a uniform grippy surface that allows paint to bond much better to the 3D print. 3D prints from FDM printers have visible layer lines, as I mentioned earlier. So a filler helps fill in those micro gaps and imperfections. When sanded, after priming, the surface becomes much smoother. Primer acts like a spotlight for imperfections. Once you spray it on, you'll easily spot uneven surfaces, scratches, or support marks that you might have missed during sanding. The color for your primer does not really matter. However, I would recommend definitely using a black primer if you can, just because you'll be able to see the imperfections so much clearer as opposed to using something like a white primer or maybe something like a blue primer. So number 5 on the list, and probably the most important, is paint. So once your print is smooth and your primer has dried, you can use the desired color of your choice. Just make sure to not go too heavy on the spraying, otherwise you'll get drip marks all over the print. So number 6 and final on the list is clear coat. So this part is of course totally optional, as I mentioned earlier. It's just if you want to add a protective layer to your print at the end. It won't affect the look of the print. Just make sure that you wait until after your paint has dried before using the clear coat. So now that we went over all the materials we're going to need and why we use them, now I'm going to show you actually how to use them. So because I'm in my garage, I'm going to wear my mask just so that I don't inhale any tiny dust particles or paint particles. Alright, so for this demonstration, I'm going to be using this Iron Man faceplate. Ignore the writing I have here, it's just a note I left for myself. So our goal here is to get rid of as many layer lines and inconsistencies as possible. And that's what you guys need to keep in mind as you're sanding. Get rid of the layer lines and get rid of the inconsistencies. Of course, you won't get them all on your first attempt. It's just important to know that you're going to go back and forth between sanding and priming and that that's your primary goal. Alright, so sanding is super simple. You guys are just going to want to evenly sand each area until you think that the layer lines are pretty much gone. Of course, they won't be gone in your first attempt. You guys are going to have to go over certain surfaces over and over again. It is kind of a lengthy process, but just it's important to keep in mind that when you're sanding, you don't want to spend too much time in one area. If you do, then all the friction from your sander, whether it's manual or electric, doesn't really matter. It will result in the print melting. So once you think you've done a good job sanding, then now you can move on to priming. So put your first coat of primer onto the object. Again, don't overdo it, otherwise you'll have too much buildup. After your primer has dried, you might notice the print still isn't completely smooth. That's okay. From this point on, you're just going to want to do a back and forth between painting and sanding. You're going to want to do this until the print is as smooth as you'd like it to be. Once you're done this, we can move on to painting. So grab the color of your choice. This can be a metallic finish, a regular base color finish, or even a matte finish. Regardless of whichever one you choose, you're going to want to apply one smooth layer and then let it dry. If the paint job is not to your liking, don't worry. Just repeat the process. It's that simple. If there's a part that you don't like, you're going to want to sand that area, prime it, and then paint it again. And again, if it still doesn't work, just repeat. Just keep sanding, keep priming, keep sanding, keep priming until it's super smooth. Wait until it's completely dry, then just apply a layer of paint and you should be good to go. If all goes well, then congratulations. You just painted your first 3D printed part. So that about does it for today's video, guys. Of course, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll answer every single question I get. If this video helped you out, please leave a like. And of course, I'll see you in the next video. Keep building. Subscribe for more engineering content.